Hi, my name is Steven and welcome back to my channel. And today I'm going to be talking to you about why start a side hustle, pros and cons of being a Flipbook and Photobooth operator. So as part of my side hustle series, today I'm going to be talking to you about why start a side hustle in being a Flipbook and Photobooth operator. I started this with a coworker of mine who was a wedding videographer and he wanted to branch out. And in addition to his videography, he wanted to be a one-stop shop for all weddings. He wanted someone to help out with a Flipbook and Photobooth operator at the weddings. So being new to the business world, I jumped on the opportunity to help him out. And so the reason why I really got into this was because I wanted to learn about how to run a business and also learn from an expert. So for me, it wasn't really about earning extra income on the side. That was just a bonus. So the money I earned from this side gig wasn't that much, but the satisfaction and fun I had while doing this job was immense. So in today's video, I'm going to talk about why I started this side hustle and some of the pros and cons of being a Flipbook and Photobooth operator. And before we start, be sure to like, subscribe, comment, share with your friends, hit that notification bell if you like this content. And let's do this. So let's first talk about how I got into this side hustle in the first place. So really, I wanted to help my coworker out with his wedding videography business, and he wanted to branch out so he'd be the one-stop shop for all wedding stuff. And he was looking for good people to bring along and then be coached by him as well. And so what he promised was have a little fun on the side, earn a little extra income, and go to amazing parties. And I figured, what the hell, let's give it a shot. And so what we did was we went to weddings and corporate events and set up a photo booth or Flipbook operations there. And basically all what it entails from an administrative point of view was to set up our website, get bookings, and then go to the event. We had to obviously have the equipment in place, so we bought that online. All of these things came in kits, so we didn't have to actually build anything ourselves. Everything really came pre-packaged. And so just to intro what it is, a photo booth is basically a stationary camera setup, and all you're doing is taking pictures of guests with crazy props. And after the guest takes the pictures, the on-site printer prints out their photos in real time, and then we hand them the finished photos. And for a Flipbook operator, you take a 7-second video of whatever the guest wants to do. And after the guest takes its 7-second video, it gets printed out on printer paper. And each one of those pages has a couple of seconds worth of video, and you cut them and put them together in a small book. And after you put the book together, you flip through it and it becomes like an analog YouTube. So here's an example. And so I did this for about a year of my life, and it was an amazing time. We were able to get consistent bookings, and we didn't have a problem advertising our businesses to corporate or wedding venues. But alas, it wasn't meant to be. My business partner and I had disagreements on how to grow the company. We eventually dissolved our partnership. It wasn't a bad ending and we left on good terms, but there was a fundamental disagreement that we had and we just couldn't resolve it. So instead of me forcing the issue, I decided it wasn't worth my time and energy and possibly break up our friendship. But overall, it was one of those times in my life that I wish I could go back and relive. It was some of the most fun I had while working. So now let's talk about some of the pros of being a Flipbook and Photobooth operator. You go to really nice expensive weddings and corporate events. It is absolutely amazing some of the parties that I've attended. All these events had lots of food, people, and were just amazing overall. By far, the best part of the experience is that it didn't feel like working. I thought I was one of the guests and having fun along with them. Being part of the fun party atmosphere was just an amazing experience. And some of the amenities that the guests have, you also has as a vendor. So for example, some of the weddings cater to their vendors as well. So we oftentimes ended up eating the same dinner as the wedding guests did. And let me tell you, some of the food was absolutely delicious. And you can also enjoy the beautiful scenery wherever the event is held. And also sometimes you can party along with the guests as well, as long as whoever hired you approves of it. And another pro, the job was pretty easy. So for the most part, during the event, you just had to babysit the thing and get the guests to take pictures. So some of the things we had to do was keeping people within the frame of the camera, getting props organized, and also managing drunk people. So even though you're contracted for the entire evening, most of the time people are listening to speakers or eating, and so the bulk of the time becomes waiting around. So even though you might be contracted for a 4-hour event, you might end up working only 1 or 2 of those hours. And another pro was that I had an absolute blast working with my coworkers. So because I had a stake in the ownership of the company, I hired all of my friends to help me out. And so really, I had fun along with my friends at those wedding events and parties. This was a no-frills, easy job, and you get to hang out with your friends. And so really, it gave my friends the ability to have fun and make some money on the side as well. So it was really great perk to have my friends join along with me. And for my last pro, this is a job that interacts with people all the time. For this job, you really had to be social and engaged with the guests. They're there to get drunk and have a good time. And so I had so much fun interacting with guests at a high energy level, and it really felt like a party atmosphere all the time. This social energy level was in direct contrast of my main engineering job. So it was like a night and day difference. So I learned to be highly social on the job, and it really increased my social skills as a result of that. So now let's talk about the cons of a Flipbook and Photobooth operator. So first of all, the pay generally wasn't that good. Because we just started our business and we didn't have any Yelp reviews, we had to start our prices very low to get some of our intro clients in the door. We made money, but it wasn't initially as high as the other side hustles that I've had. And generally, it wasn't as lucrative as the other side hustles about a year in. And there was also a lot of initial expenses that had to be covered with our starting gigs. So we really had to get a few gigs under our belt before we broke even. That said, we generally didn't give ourselves a paycheck, but I did receive a stipend for my involvement in the business. It generally worked out to about $15 to $20 an hour. And so with that, my friends would make about $100 to $120 a night. And another con was that the logistics were sometimes really tough. In many cases, when you're in the event industry, you have to go to remote or very densely populated locations. Weddings in Napa Valley, weddings in prime real estate locations, generally places that are either heavily concentrated in the city area or very remote and sparse. So for example, when we had gigs in San Francisco, we had very tight spots to park in, and we generally had to pack up and ship and move stuff to very small locations. And also we had to contend with traffic all the time. So the locations were very small, and so we had to plan out how we're going to set things up. And in areas like Napa Valley, it was very remote. We had to drive an hour or two just to get there and set up. So we had to factor in the time and cost of transportation. And obviously, we weren't paid for the drive time out there. We were only paid for the event. So when you take all the costs into account, we actually made less per hour than we anticipated. Also, another con was that the worker turnover was pretty high. So even though I hired some of my friends and I trusted them with the work, it was just generally something that they would have fun with and that they could drop whenever they want. So there wasn't that sense of responsibility when I needed someone right away, or I was in a tough bind and I needed someone for that Saturday night. And the other issue was that my business partner didn't trust anybody I hired as the primary person. It was either me or him going to the events every time. So if I couldn't do the job and he couldn't either, then we had to cancel the gig. And this was really painful for us because there was a lot of gigs that we couldn't do just because either one of us were busy. And this was part of the reason why I eventually stopped working with him, because I wanted to train the staff under me to do the job. I wanted to train the staff so that they could do my job if necessary. And he wanted the quality control of one of us to handle things. So because the worker turnover was high, we never had a consistent group of people that went with us from event to event. And so I always had to teach people the same things over and over, and that got really tiresome for me. And lastly, I had to work a lot of weekends. And while it was fun attending all those weekend events, there was a part of me that wished I had free weekends. It's exhausting to try to go out 4 or 5 weekends in a row. And during the summertime, which is wedding season, it gets really busy. And so we hardly had a weekend off to relax. And because all the weddings happened together and all the corporate events happened together, it was very hard to get those weekends off. You knew you were going to go to a gig no matter what. And that's some of the reason why I kind of wanted to offload it to other people, so that we had more people that can be the point of contact when things go wrong, or if we needed someone to step in at the last minute. So in general, it wasn't fun to have your weekends booked weeks in advance. So here are my general thoughts on the side hustle. In the end, I really wish my business partner and I had worked out our differences. And I hated the fact that we couldn't resolve it and we had to dissolve our partnership. We just couldn't stabilize the business without more people helping us. This was something that we just couldn't figure out the solution to. I think ultimately we made a good team and we would have made some good money while I was still in San Francisco. I'm also really grateful to my business partner who really showed me the ropes on how to run a successful business. Being 25, 26, I really didn't have an understanding of how people ran a business. And because of his mentorship and knowledge, I'm able to now run my own businesses. And I'll always be grateful for what he taught me. And of all the side gigs that I've had, this is the only one where I wish I stayed more time at the events. This was a side gig that I didn't even think it was a job. It was something fun that I wanted to just keep going. And ultimately, this is what's helping me to pursue side gigs that are more fun-based rather than profit-based. So hopefully I can find more of these side gigs that are in this sweet spot. This is also a side gig that somebody can run by themselves. There are many photo booths and Flipbook kits online, and anyone can purchase them for under $2,000 and start their own photography business. The hard part is getting your name recognition out there. But once you do have those steady clients, they'll refer you to other clients as well. And at that point, you won't have a lack of work because they'll just be referring to other people that will refer to other people, and you can keep it going for as long as you want. So it's really quite easy to get started in being a Flipbook or photo booth operator. And lastly, this job is so unique because you interface with so many people all the time. It really takes an outgoing personality to engage and have fun with the guests. And most of the successful photo booth operators are the ones that are pulling people in to take photos all the time. Because at the end of the day, the person who hired you wants those photos. They want the memories. So to be a successful photo booth operator, you want people to take as many pictures as you can. So this is a job that can be directly influenced on how outgoing you are. So would I do it again? I would go back and do this job under the right conditions. Right now, my weekend nights are more stable and I have more time overall to go and do these events. Now, obviously, the pandemic is taking a bite out of all businesses related to weddings, so I would definitely wait until the pandemic ends before I even start considering going back into this side gig. So there you have it. That's my review of being a Flipbook and photo booth operator as a side gig. It was an absolute blast to work with this job. It was an amazing experience and I loved attending the weddings and corporate events. I really had so much fun talking to the guests, interacting with them, and then just generally having fun with them. It was almost worth it just to be at that party. I mean, some of these parties were really lavish and expensive and just extravagant. And for some of these corporate events, only the employees can attend. So you're really part of a small group of people that can even attend that party. So if you really like the party life and you like attending these events, then this is the side gig for you. The downside of the side gig is that it's usually lower paying, especially if you're starting out for the first time. But once you start to get that name recognition, you can start increasing your rates. And of course, your weekends are going to be taken up by these events. You're going to have a hard time getting a free weekend, especially during those busy months. You'll just know in advance that you're going to have a couple of months blocked out where you can't hang out with friends or family on those weekends. Getting into this side hustle can be pretty easy. The cost of entry is fairly low. Now, obviously, it's going to take a little bit of work to get that first client, but once you do, you can get consistent clients through referrals. Although you might have to deal with local competition, so do your homework beforehand. And lastly, if you have an outgoing personality, I really recommend this side hustle. It's so fun, it's so entertaining, and you generally have a blast. I mean, what's not to like? Attending parties and events and getting paid to do it. So thank you for watching. Be sure to leave me a comment down below on whether or not you'd be interested in being a Flipbook or photo booth operator and whether or not you would find it enjoyable. And I'll see you next time.